All right, this is UnEducated. It's Friday, 10 o'clock, and we are here. Matt's out, so I'm running the board today, and we have a special guest with us. Mitch Miller is here with us. He's kind of family. Mitch, welcome.
Nice to be here.
All right, good to be here. All right, we're gonna go ahead and jump in real quick. But if you, for some reason, you're on the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe. And if you like the video, make sure you click the like button so that we can get all those crazy algorithms going so that we can get our videos up and running. The other thing is this: if you don't have a regular church, make sure that you find a good one that teaches the word and loves people. And if you're in the area and you don't have one, you can check us out, anycommunity.org. So this is Mitch and Brandon are here today. Like I said, Matt's out. And so, Mitch, I'm going to ask you just to tell us just a little bit about yourself real quick before we jump into some discussion. And then we'll get into some news, and then we'll just kind of chat about some other topics.
All right, Brian's nephew. I'm Brandon's cousin. From Middlefield originally. Moved to California probably 2000 or 99 for college, and never really came back.
Nice. That's good.
Well, actually, I went to, after college, I went to New York for a year, and it was a horrible experience. And then I moved back to LA, and just loving it out there. I work in for a pharmaceutical company. I work in like a technology innovation, and I've been doing that for a while, and just, I don't know, enjoying it.
Cool. Brandon, you're here today. What's been going on in your week?
Just work.
So when you say just work, you're not actually doing anything, right?
Well, yeah, it's Friday.
I'm definitely doing stuff.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
All right. Did you get any good accounts?
Accounts, jobs?
Yeah, like for the company?
We're working on one in Cleveland called the Flats. It's like, it should be like a $6 million project for us.
Okay.
So
All right, cool.
that's what that phone call was.
Oh, you were just on the phone, like getting a job right before we came online?
Yeah, like we're going to have a scope review here soon.
Wow.
So.
That's dedicated.
You do like plumbing and stuff? Is that what this is about? I thought so.
All right.
I always think when I see this show that you should always have your hat off because you can never see your face.
I know.
He wants to see your face.
Well, I mean,
I'm bald up here.
Hold on,
no, you're not. And who cares?
Twist this.
You're not.
I like wearing a hat.
Okay. Well,
Sorry, I just had to get a side shot there. See this camera right here? We were all out of focus there, so I had to get us back in. All right. So, Mitch, I was just on Weather Channel this morning, and there's a cyclone headed to California. So my thought is that you're not going home anytime soon. You were planning on going home, what, Monday maybe? Leaving Monday?
Sunday evening, Monday morning, yes.
All right. So you might as well just plan on staying around.
You know, I get a lot of phone calls. I think you guys get, you know how like the media kind of like trumps up everything?
Yeah.
You guys always see like these major cyclones and all that. And like
Right.
I go look outside and it's like 80 degrees and sunny. Like it seems like y'all see just pieces of reality. So
Well-
we'll be on our way Sunday
Okay,
evening.
so I got a question for all you California people. You feel like you're ahead of the game with on everybody else? I mean, ultimately, like we're kind of slow here in the East, and because ultimately, like trends come to us after. Like trends start out west, and then they come to us. But do you feel like even from a media standpoint or informational standpoint, you guys get stuff before we do?
No, I don't think
No?
so. No,
Okay.
I think it's all this. In regards to trends, yes, but I think it's because it gets tested in like areas where there's population, right? Like if something's gonna fly, it's gonna fly where there's the majority of people, and then
Yeah.
eventually, a couple of years later, that you guys will see this and transgress. But from media, no, I think it's all the same. I think we
Yeah.
get all the same.
Well, all I know is that I did hear recently that there is a lab in Chicago that's working on a stronger coronavirus.
Okay, so that's stuff that we don't see. That's called fake news.
I don't think it's fake.
I think you guys hold on.
You remember Wuhan?
I do. Yes, I do. I would say that when it comes to the different types of media, like conspiracy theory, I think this is where it all evolves.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, that's my opinion. I can't back that up with any
Does your
facts.
company make you get the
Coronavirus? shot
The
or we were going to because we're government contracted, so we legally were required to do that. But then they sent out notification that everybody needed to be vaccinated, but they never gave a timeline. And so it got to the point where we were communicating to everybody that, we had to get a vaccination by a certain date or we're going to be let go. But the government never came back with an actual date, and then it just kind of dissipated.
So
So it went
didn't
away.
have to do it.
But everybody was doing it because we had a timeline. But I would say that more than 90, this is just a guess, but I would say like probably in the upwards of 80 to 90% of people were already getting the vaccine on their own for my company. It didn't have the stigma, at least in the bubble that I live in, it didn't have the stigma that it did here. When I came here, like it was hard to get an appointment to get a vax or get a booster in California. You had to like maybe go a little further than your local CVS, and you had to wait. Here, like I was on the way over to a pharmacy in Menor and got online and got the appointment. I was like the only one there.
Huh.
'Cause I had to get my booster here.
Yeah.
But the stigma didn't exist. I don't think it existed anywhere near as much as it did here.
Well, I think part of the reason is because in this area we felt like they should have at least tested it for at least another week or two before they brought it out. Maybe 3 days. Maybe if they were given 3 more days testing
I honestly,
on at least the lab rat.
I think, but I wouldn't say the technology, but the methodology has been around longer than the virus, right? Of delivering it. And
You mean mRNA vax type?
yeah.
Okay, all right.
And so, I mean, I had no fear of getting the vaccine.
Okay.
And nobody else questioned the vaccines back in the day when it was a different virus.
Yeah.
It was just this virus that people got concerned about.
Well, there've always been the non-vaxxers.
Sure.
Yeah.
But even that, and thinking about it from like when vaccines first came out, polio was one of the first vaccines, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Even the non-vaccine is new. Non-vaxxers are somewhat new.
I hear
Think
what
about
you're
it
saying. I
over
hear what you're
10,
saying.
15 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think people should have their own. Like, should be able to make their decision if they want vaccinated
Right,
or not.
right.
I don't think it should be mandatory for everybody. It's
It's kind of crappy to get fired over not getting it, right?
true, but I mean, I don't know. I just think
So you're more to one side.
should we what?
You're more than to one side.
What do you mean more than one side?
Like you want people to have it versus.
I think, I'm absolutely think people should be vaccinated, but I think there are some instances where people are concerned and scared, and not just because of this. To me, the problem was that it was about just this vaccine. That's and the hype and the stigma and like all of the fake news or whatever. Or I don't want to be that objective, but
You sound like Donald Trump.
he is my idol.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God! Please take that out.
I figured.
Cut that. It just seems like there was so much going on about it, and it just was not good for us as a nation, for there to be this overly hyped concern about it. You know what? I may be eating my words 20 years down the road when I have no legs or something, right? But regardless, as it stands today,
That's funny.
it is. You have to do. I think what's the best for everybody,
Yeah.
in my opinion. You guys vaxxed?
No.
No, Jesus.
Well, that's funny. No, but I think I do think like what Brandon said though, it's a little disheartening to know that someone who's given all their life to like say a job or a company, and then the company decides. But I think that's just part of the capitalistic society we live in, that companies have that right, I guess, to do that. But then you get into the whole discrimination clauses and all this stuff, and so now all of a sudden, are you discriminating against people who are vaccinated or not? So that's the whole problem and the issue. But ultimately, I think if you are gonna give people the right to say what they can and cannot do over their body, then probably they're going to have to make that choice on whether or not. Then okay, so for instance, if I wanted to work at a place that doesn't treat animals humanely when they slaughter them, then I would work there. But if I wanted to work at a place that treats animals humanely, I'll have a lot smaller options because that's what I believe. So it's going to be the same thing today with all this other health stuff. Like I'm going to have to decide, okay, well, I don't want to do this, so that company requires it. Well, then I'm going to have to move on. And I think at the end of the day, people just got to figure out what they're doing then and just go where they'll be accepted. I mean, unless of course it's the law of the land, and then everybody's got a problem. But
True, true. I mean, it's just at the end of the day, employer, it's freedom of choice, right?
Yeah, right.
You don't, you're not obligated to work there, and they're not obligated to have you work there,
Right.
But you're right that it becomes very difficult when the options are limited.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you still have your choice.
Yep.
So when companies are being criticized for demanding vaccines, for example, isn't that kind of contrary to what we just said? Because they should have the right to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, okay, fine, they have the right to do that. I still would be critical because I'm like, that's kind of, it's almost like everybody yells discrimination all the time. So I feel like a part of that is because it'd be different if we found out that every single person that wasn't vaccinated was dying, And so now all of a sudden they have hard data that says, we're doing this for the safety of everybody. But long story short, not even to argue about that, but I would just feel like it's discrimination. So I might criticize, but at the end of the day, that's their gig. They have a right to do that.
Right.
So
Right.
I would say then in my opinion, then you just have to make a choice to go find a job somewhere else.
Right, or go somewhere else to do your grocery shopping if you don't want to put a mask on.
Yeah, right.
And it sucks. It
Right.
really does. But it just
Right. Or
There's so
buy
much
some
gray.
or buy some chickens in the spring, which is what we plan on doing because I'm not paying $6 a dozen for eggs anymore. That's ridiculous.
How much are eggs out your way?
we were about $8 or $9, I think they are. For I mean, you can get the cheap eggs for probably like $4 or something like that. Like the ones that are like thin white shell and like opaque yolk.
Yeah. But Mitch, tell them what you buy.
They're called. I wish I had the website so I could plug it. I think it's Vita Farms. Vita Farms, and the cool thing about these eggs is like when you open the carton, there's a little card inside, and inside it gives you a web address to go on to see the live chickens or hens. Yeah, there you go. That produced your breakfast.
That's cool.
And they are free range. And you know what? Here's how we can see, Brian. If it's raining on that webcam, we know it's real.
So let's go. Where we go to the webcam at?
I don't really frequent this website. But
These are real eggs.
I'm sorry.
Everything in here is like real eggs.
Yeah, real.
What other kind of eggs?
Some people do that.
So what they do is I believe what they do is they work with a bunch of small farms throughout like California. I think that last I knew they were just California, but and they're free range. Because we have I think we're the first state that passed that law where hens should have somewhat of a decent life. So we stopped them from being, I don't know if we stopped them from being caged or required them to have a certain amount of space.
That's cool.
And then the new hype was like free range, where they can just run around. Oh my gosh.
So
I want to find this. We can't find it.
You want to go to that website?
No, I don't want to go to it. I just want to. Because last night you when I told you the story, you thought I was
Well, yeah, it's just a loop.
You thought I was just drinking the Kool-Aid.
So here's what they know about people like Mitch is they put a video camera on there and they take a shot of these really nice chickens out, running around, and then they loop that picture over and over again on their video site, and then they put all the chickens back in their little cages while they're popping the eggs out every day. And then Mitch gets on there and he's like, "Oh, look, there they are walking around.
Having fun."
And I'm like, "Did you ever notice that it's sunny all the time? It's never raining?"
Well, first of all, he said, "Did you ever notice?" He's never been on the camera site, or the site. And I'm not 70 years old to believe that I wouldn't recognize a loop.
It's funny.
But try them. They're delicious. They literally taste different.
I'll try them for sure.
They're,
We eat a lot of our, local eggs.
oh, yeah.
We do that. But there's this lady at work. So for the first time, I had raw organic whole milk.
Oh,
It was amazing. That was like
really?
a couple weeks ago. And then I ate a raw quail egg. There's these special scissors. You cut the top of the egg off, pepper and salt, and a little dab of hot sauce, and you suck it out.
God, that was delicious.
It was good. It was good, actually.
I imagine for some people it would be delicious.
I mean, the texture's weird, but it was.
You just swallow it, right? You don't you
Yeah.
chewing it up.
Well, I
Yeah.
smash it around in my mouth.
You got it. I think that's strange.
I think it's absolutely
pretty good.
All right. Well, any other news that you guys want to talk about? I was searching around for some things, and here's the one thing. Like, I know it's a travesty that Joe Biden can't put I know it's hard, but see, this is the thing. Like, I myself sometimes stumble over my words, but when they put clips on, like, where he's just like saying things that make absolutely no sense, and then they sit and make fun of him. I mean, I get it. There's some humor in that, and we should, I don't want anybody to stop being, funny and, being able to do that. But at the end of the day, that's kind of that's a high office to have with someone who really is cognitively, in decline. And yet at the same time, you might see another thing that he's talking, okay, like he's talking decent and he says things decent. But at the end of the day, I don't even concern myself with it because I know he's not even running the country. And any president that ever gets in there, they don't run the country.
There's a lot to unpack there, what you're just talking about.
Yeah, so you want to unpack it?
Cognitive decline.
Yeah. How old is he? 80-something?
Yeah, I think he'll definitely be in the 90s if he gets reelected, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not necessarily a fan of Joe Biden by any means at all. However,
you're Bernie Sanders fan.
I definitely was a Bernie Sanders
Yeah.
supporter and fan.
Come on.
You know what I really like, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you used to be a Ron Paul fan.
Oh, you're wrong.
I am wrong?
Absolutely.
I thought you were a Ron Paul fan.
No, that was Josh.
I still think Ron Paul should be in there. Even now, I would go
Ron,
I would vote.
that's the dad, right?
Yeah, the dad.
Yeah.
I think the dad's level-headed.
I don't know him well enough. I mean, he was always kind of advertised as being kind of kooky too, right? Very extreme in one sense.
Yeah.
But let's go back to your Biden discussion.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, the reason I brought it up is because I don't think it's very Christian-like to just sit around and make fun of someone. I mean, I understand some humor, cracking a joke here and there, but like you got Fox News and these places who are supposedly conservative Christian, and all they do is sit around and make fun of them.
well, yeah.
So I don't know if that's fair.
No, I mean, but this, I guess, have you guys ever stopped and listened to? And I'm not trying to be in political situation right now or talk politics right now,
we don't listen to nothing.
but have you listened to like Trump's speech and the way he speaks? He says a lot of words, but they don't cognitively make sense, right? They're not like, if you really listen to and pay attention to the context of what he's saying, it's everywhere. So you have him just mouthing a bunch of words that don't create sentences, and you have Biden that just can't form a sentence either. with all due respect.
Billions and billions.
Of what?
Billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Whom?
That's Trump.
It's gonna be beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Right. What is? Beautiful. It's going to be beautiful.
Beautiful.
It's-
Just wait. So what are you gonna do? Just wait. You'll see. I get it.
Yeah, I don't. But also, I mean, who are they up against, right? They're trying to. Barack Obama was an eloquent speaker. He really controlled his audience,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And he spoke very well. So,
Big time.
they had a lot of. They had some big shoes to fill, which they couldn't. They didn't. But I mean, this goes back gaffes like Bush was always.
Right.
He became like the first president like that SNL mocked.
I know.
I believe, right?
Yeah,
and it was
good.
amazing. It was
It was
beautiful.
good,
Right? But I'm not a fan of Biden by any means. But he was like the lead, how do you say that? The best of the worst or something like that. Like he was the best option between the two.
Gotcha.
But I think we should continue to poke fun at them.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
You think
Like
I could see a Saturday Night Live skit doing something like that.
Yeah.
But like, I guess I just get frustrated because it doesn't. I don't think it helps people think rationally about situations just by poking fun. Like let's take the facts and let's deal with that instead of just making fun. We know the guy can't put a sentence together. So instead of continuing to roll those day in and day out, and I get it, it's like people are concerned because they're like, well, this is the guy that's supposedly running the country. But if anybody ever woke up, they would know that he's not running the country.
Right.
But
I agree.
so
I think the problem is the 24-hour news cycle and us having a desire to always be in the know. And there generally isn't that much to talk about. So what is Fox News or MSNBC? What are they going to talk about? The same thing over and over again. And when
Right.
there's no news, then you just talk about how ignorant this person looks at the mic
Right.
or whatnot, right?
Right.
I agree. I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be like the premise of every news show or any news. Let's talk about the real situation and problems, and then leave the humor up to like an SNL situation.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Never stop that. Though.
Yeah. But yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. That's all. It's gonna be great. All right. Well, you guys got anything that was on your minds that you wanted to throw out and talk about?
I apologize. This decision for me to come on was just last night, so I didn't have any time to do any type of research, and
So-
I've been out of the loop because I've been traveling.
So here's what happened last night. Mitch and Raymond had April, myself, and my sister over for dinner last night, and we got to meet the dogs. And so I said, "What's this dog's name?" And he says, "A collie." And I'm like, "What's wrong with you? That's not a collie." I'm like, "I'm pretty sure that's a husky." It's like, "No, the name is a collie."
A collie.
A
Yeah.
collie?
A collie. Yeah.
A collie. But I thought he was like
Telling
in
him
his
to-
head he didn't know what kind of dog it was, and it was a collie. I'm like, it's not a collie.
But it's spelled different, and they're League of Legend characters.
What's the other one's name?
Echo, with a K.
Echo.
A
Yeah.
collie and Echo.
Yes.
Yeah. Super cool, beautiful dogs, beautiful eyes. I mean, super cool. So we're eating these perfectly cooked steaks. Even mine, which was, I asked for medium well to well, and it was like medium. It was like right in the middle of that. So somehow Mitch became a chef overnight. I don't know how that happened.
Somehow.
So we're eating these, and we start talking all this different stuff. And April's like, "Oh, you should go on the show." And so then we're like, "Yeah, you should come on the show." And we were talking about some really cool things. Maybe we can pick up some of those things here as we chat through. But so that's kind of how that happened. So we were like, "Yeah, come on the show."
And then Raymond was advocating for it because he really wanted to come on. Well, he didn't really want to come on. He wanted me to come on, and he wanted to come and watch, I believe. But we asked what we're going to do with the dogs, and April suggested that we can bring the dogs. And Brian looked around. He's like, "Well,
How much
I
do they
guess
weigh?
so." And that wasn't like, "Yes, bring them." It was like, "If you have to."
Yeah. Well, the thing, they're perfect dogs, and they wouldn't have no. They would come in here and they would have laid down. They would have sat right there and watched this, which would have been super cool. But I'm just like, like that's a lot of hair.
It is.
So then I was like, I'm gonna have to clean up after that. I don't know how much time I'm gonna have. We got men's group tomorrow, but I was willing to do. I was like, okay, we'll figure it out.
Well, none of that was said last night.
But none
just
of
for
that was said
record.
last night. So then they woke up going, I'm not so sure he wants to bring the dogs, but they would have been really cool.
Yeah, they'd have just been chill.
Yeah.
And I brushed them the day before yesterday, so it wouldn't have been that bad.
Because I'm always the person where I'm really practical right in the beginning. I'm like, hair, I have to clean it up and all that stuff. But then I'm like, all right, well, yeah, that's fine. But then I didn't convey that.
Sometimes it's too late.
Yeah. So
How old are they?
A collie just turned 2, and Echo is almost 4.
Good deal.
all right, well, let's jump into this. Brandon, did you have anything? No.
Not yet.
Okay.
I'll come up with some stuff here in a minute.
Brandon's gonna come up with some things.
What's one thing you don't agree with, like political wise, that's happening right now in our country?
Oh, wow, there's a lot. Well,
Like all the sex trafficking?
that's not very political.
He agrees with that.
But that's not politics. I mean, that's just
But there's a lot of politicians involved in it.
Oh, you're talking about the conspiracy piece of this.
No, it's not conspiracy, dude.
Okay.
NAMBLA's been around for a long. You know NAMBLA,
I don't.
National Association for Young Boy and Man Love. You've heard of that?
Oh, Jesus, Mary Joseph.
That's been around forever. That's been around since the 60s or 70s. And there were
Wait,
like
what is the acronym again?
National Association for Man Boy Love. So it's a movement that happened back in the 60s or 70s that pushed that young boys should be able to have the right to have relationships with older men. And it was driven, and of course we could say it was conspiracy, but there seemed to be a lot of leakage of known politicians that were a part of that whole thing. And then of course you have the whole the plain log of even Trump and all these other people that are going to Epstein Island. So when I say I think it might be political, I'm not trying to say conspiracy. I'm just saying there are some pretty good factual evidences of at least people touching that realm where that stuff is going on. And it seems odd to me that they wouldn't know about it because they're political, they're powerful people, that they wouldn't know about it. And if they knew about it, Were they just turning a blind eye because someone paid them, or were they a part of it? That's all my thoughts.
Understood. But none of this is new, right?
No, kids
the
and
Greeks
people,
were
women. Yep.
very well known for
Yeah.
for partaking in that, and it was just I don't know if it was accepted or known about and just not spoken, but it was I don't believe that's a conspiracy theory. I know nothing about it. Clearly not a member. But I mean, it seems like a lot of the stuff has surfaced, like the whole Pizzagate thing. I mean, I really never got into. Raymond and I actually had this conversation about the whole Wayfair. It was like they were
The online shopping place,
yeah,
Wayfair?
where you can order a closet for like $30,000 and there's a kid inside. You guys hear about that? Yeah. I don't know how you guys. It probably was made up here, and I don't know how we heard about it, but
Also, all the made-up stuff comes from the east and goes to the west.
yeah, absolutely.
All the true stuff comes from the west and gets to the east.
Yes,
That's what you're
yes,
saying.
yes,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, I got you.
Yeah, and there's a battle in Oklahoma, right? Where
Yeah, that's good.
no, there was this. So basically, that there was these there was a number of closets that were on Wayfair's website, and the names of the closets, like the brand names, were names of children that were abducted by happenstance, I believe, in my opinion, because I'll keep my opinion on the side. But and then people were so there were some people noticed that, and these closets were extremely expensive. Like I even went online and saw them, like $23,000 for like an IKEA closet type situation where you could probably got to build it yourself. And the whole conspiracy was that this closet or these closets, I don't know if they had children inside or if you got them delivered with your children. I don't know how it was supposed to work. You know what I mean? How the conspiracy was said to have happened. But it literally was a big thing. I mean, Wayfair addressed it immediately and took the closets down.
Okay. All right.
But I don't know. It's just, some of this stuff is just crazy. And at the end of the day, there's probably truth to a lot of, there's probably a little truth to many things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you can't argue that some things are just crazy and that
They
people
are.
just really kind of make up in their own accord. So,
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
but
Good point. Point well taken.
so to me, that's not political. What, like,
Right.
you know, there's a lot of things politically happening right now. Obviously, you know, I think the abortion turning abortion
Roe v.
back to
Wade.
the states is to me problematic. I'm not aligned with that at all. I'm not pro-abortion, but I'm also not pro-life. That's
Why?
probably-
You're living.
no, and yeah,
You don't want to live?
I do want to live. I am alive.
All right.
And I'm not, you know, but
I just wanna make sure.
I'm listing.
Okay.
What else am I against? I think it's crazy that there's such an uproar about us assisting Ukraine and how people are like, well, you can spend your dollars at home. Why are we spending money in Ukraine? I think that's bizarre.
So let's go back. So let's start with there's two hot button topics.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to the abortion one. Can you just state, like, in a quick summary, your reasoning why you think it's a bad thing to give states the right to decide on the issue of abortion, life, pro-life, pro-choice?
Truth be told, the problem isn't with the states having the jurisdiction. But that's not a problem for me. The problem is that the majority of states are going to rule in favor, basically banning or outlawing abortion. They did it immediately. To me, that's the problem.
In some states.
It's not about to me, it's not. Yeah, but it's not about the states having. Because I believe in states having more power, right? But that's not the problem. The problem for me is just the fact that it's not a national law anymore. It never really was, I guess. But it's not. It's just that it's being overturned. That's the problem. It's not about it going back to the states. Some people think that's a hot topic. The states should have their rights, right? State rights are really important. But that, to me, is not the problem. The problem is the fact that not all states are going to allow it to continue.
Right.
It's the abortion issue for me.
So when you say it's a problem, you would favor the side that says that if a woman decides that she wants to have an abortion, whatever the reason she wants to have an abortion, and she doesn't have that right in a state, the cry is that she'll go to some chop shop and maybe be hurt as well, which is her choice. I mean, it's her choice to do that, or she has to try and go across state lines to do that. And that could become problematic, or maybe she can't do it. She doesn't have the money or whatever to do that. Or she just ends up having the baby, and then we have, another issue on our hands. Is that the theory behind that? So
I wouldn't say you categorize it like the cry. It's true. It happened before, right? When abortions were outlawed before, women were dying by going to these quote unquote
right.
chop shops that you call them, right? So I think that definitely happened. Yes, I just think that women should have the right. And I'm not a woman, so I can't necessarily give you all of. I only understand so much, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, they should have the right because it's their body, it's their decision. It's so plain as that. To
so
me.
What do you say to the argument of the child then has no rights? Because we talk about the woman having the right, it's her body. Well, okay, I agree she can do what she wants to her body, but now she's inflicting her choice on another human being. So how do you see that? Because then that baby doesn't have a choice or a right.
Yeah. I mean, the argument it depends on the argument is when is the child a child? When is it? I mean, I know that at conception, the belief is that it becomes what we call a baby, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to be ignorant here, but I just think that I think until birth, it's not its own entity. And I know that sounds cold, right? And again, I'm not about like let's just go like hand out abortions at the Walmart, right? I'm just it's not my decision. Has nothing to do with me as an individual, but it does impact that woman, and it's the only person that it impacts is that woman and the child, right? If it were to be born, but it has nothing to do with me, and I don't think that I have a right to dictate what stance that person should have, because it's not. Nobody cares about her or that child. But when she wants to end the child's life, if we'd call it a child at that point, then we're all in uproar. You see all these interviews and where you have these protesters at clinics and whatnot, but not any of them are doing anything to help the woman or all of these children that don't have parents. Everybody just wants to argue the fact that they're killing a child, but if the child's born, what are you going to do about it? They're not going to do anything. It's like they're trying to find something to stand on.
I would agree with that.
And that's not part of the argument. I get it, right? That's not part of the argument. But at that point, it's impacting the only person that it's impacting that's here and now is the woman, so it's her decision, her choice. And that's all that can be said about it.
Yeah. That's why I think some of the best ministry that's being done to women who are trying to make those decisions is not ministry where people are standing on the street corner with signs saying you're going to go to hell or, don't kill this baby, blah, blah, blah. It's murder. I think the best ministries are the ones where they set up a little counseling clinic next door, try to help that girl work through this whole concept, and then also have options available, like whether it's adoption or whether it's, hey, we can help walk you through this whole thing so you don't have to do this process. Because I think one of the things is that a lot of times, like in the Bible says that the older women are supposed to teach the younger women how to love their wives, how to act right. I mean, how to love their husbands, how to act right, all those kinds of things. And I think we've done a disservice to all the upcoming generations because we really don't help them. We kind of, like a lot of us have our kids and then we put in minimal work sometimes of training them up. And then once they're out there in the open, like I hear this all the time. I can't wait till my kid's 18. And I'm like, I understand the idea. Like I was just having this conversation with April the other day. I was like, when the boys are finally out of the house, our grocery bill is going to be like, it's going to go in the basement, Now you could say that's a good thing, but I would rather have a high grocery bill like for another 15 years if that meant the health and the well-being, both mental and physical, of my boys, because I'm responsible. Now, some people would disagree. I'm not saying I want them living in my basement and mooching off me, but if they're working hard and they're growing in faith and doing things, I've told them this before. I said, this is your home. So I said, until you're married, then, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. As long as I said, you're going to work and you're going to do certain things and this and that. So I don't want them mooching off society, but I think adults don't. So I think you're right in the fact that young lady, when she's going into that place, they're sitting there going, hey, we're going to help you dispose of this problem you have. All right? That's kind of a brass way of saying it, but we're going to help you dispose of this problem you have, instead of someone coming up alongside in a ministry standpoint and saying, how can we help you work through this so that maybe you don't have to make this decision? And I think those are the best ministries.
I would agree, but you're right. They're not there, right? But and it's, I mean, it's not that they're not there. It's just that there's a lot less ministries than there are women going to get abortion. So how are you going to kind of, and there's
Right.
a numbers problem at that
Right.
point.
No, I would agree.
But at the end of the day, I there's nothing for more for me to say other than the fact that it's a woman's decision, right? And I think it should be left at that. That being said, the mere fact that abortion is turned to be so political, like, it's insane that people really vote for their representation based upon an individual's belief on abortion rights and forget everything else, because you know that they leverage that for their constituents. Meaning, do you really think Trump was pro-life?
No. Well, here's what I know. Even
Yes
the bill.
or is it yes or no?
Well, I don't know what he is. I know what he said he was, but I
Okay.
don't know deep down inside.
Right.
But when he signed that bill into effect, that didn't stop abortion.
No.
Like, everybody thought that was the greatest thing in the world. That bill didn't stop abortion. All that did was stop funding or giving money to the organizations over the border overseas to help them with their Planned Parenthood stuff, like in other, Mexico and different places. So people thought that was the greatest thing. So no, I don't think for a second that Trump's agenda was, I love babies so much and I don't want to see them die anymore and I don't want to see this thing happen, that's what I'm. No, I don't think for a second. I know that he as a politician had an agenda behind what he did. So no, I don't think that for a second.
But he is the reason why for that Roe v. Wade was overturned. I mean, not individually, but he did stack the court, like, as to accommodate that vote, right? And again, they have all right to do that. Whoever is in office at the time, fine. But he didn't. I don't believe that he has an intrinsic belief in value of pro-life. There's.
I would
not
probably agree with that.
However, he leveraged it for his population, for the vote, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I just think that it's crazy that abortion rights, gay rights, border crisis, all these things are being leveraged, and truly not. The people that represent us are just using those as pivot points to gather votes, and they most likely could care less,
Right.
other than
Stray
talking points.
people.
Just like climate change, all this stuff.
Well, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No, seriously. If we're gonna,
That we're-
because I'm in agreement with all that stuff, but I think politicians leverage the climate change thing just as well in order to get billions and billions of dollars in their pockets. So, for instance, back in the day, when Al Gore and them were pushing for all this, stuff in the beginning,
Pushing or educating?
Oh, well, we'll use the word you just used. We'll use educating.
Okay.
They were educating, maybe false education or at least biased education, but they were okay. We'll say they were educating, but in the process, you've got them putting these type of carbon, emissions thing and saying, okay, this is your carbon footprint and this is how much, and then they're getting in their jets and they're flying back and forth to places. So they, in a sense, are hypocrites as well. And ultimately, you look at that and you go, okay, this has an agenda not about saving the planet, but about putting money in politicians' pockets. And at the end of the day, there are some good people that I think probably want to try and save the planet. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I think from politicians' standpoint, they're all trying to leverage that for their own benefit.
I agree. Hypocrisy is definitely an issue. But I'm also a believer in climate change, and I just drove 2,500 miles in a gas guzzling vehicle, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, but what are you going to do? But at the end of the day, I'm not denying it. I'm confident that our tax dollars should be allocated to these types of resources for change, because it's real. Like, a lot of times, and I don't want to politicize this, but the argument is that the right will always argue with scientists unless it's in their favor, and none of us have any understanding to the same degree as a scientist. Why aren't we believing them?
The problem
But
is,
go ahead.
well, you have scientists that would oppose what the climate just like in the vaccine stuff, like back in the day, like 2-3 years ago, you had doctors and scientists that were totally against that, but they were canceled. They were shut off. They weren't allowed to speak. People who had a differing disagreement, and they were said, these are quacks. These are people who don't know what they're talking about. But they had medical degrees, just like the people who were touting that stuff had medical degrees. So at the end of the day, just like you and I were talking about last night, in this country, like, we are at the point where you can't have a conversation and disagree. So if you disagree, either we hate each other after we disagree, or we're going to cancel the other person or shut that other person down so they can't let their truth be known or their side be known. And I don't think that's healthy. That's not healthy for us at all.
No, no. But I mean, you can just, even though we don't have the education or the expertise to determine if climate change is real or not. If you just think about it from a fundamental perspective, and you think that our planet is a living organism, really, I mean, I guess you couldn't say living organism, but it is life, right? I mean, and you know that life can't be sustained if it's not nurtured. And we do not nurture life on this planet.
I would agree.
And so, and we are able to see changes in our planet, even from my childhood. I've seen, changes. And just because it snows doesn't mean that the climate, that global warming isn't real. Like, that's just ignorant, right? It was some congressman brought in a snowball and said, oh, the real climate change, there's snow. Well, come on, right? But it's real. And if you, I mean, just look at how, especially in other countries, how we're just kind of like not even considerate about how we treat the planet, how we don't recycle. And obviously, it's going to take an impact. It's going to have an impact.
Yeah.
But not enough to be concerned and allocate dollars. I mean, to me, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely crazy. I think we should. And you being so organic and all the other things I had to work around on yesterday's menu.
Yeah. He texts me. He's like, is there anything you can eat? Like, give me some grass.
But then he tried to be so like, oh, well, I'll eat whatever. But
I do.
I'm just,
He's a soy boy. Don't let him fool you.
I do. I eat a lot of soy products.
Isn't that bad for men?
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Here's what's bad. Soybean oil is bad because it's been processed and broken down and has it has inflammatory properties in the body. So soybean oil is horrible.
The tofu has none of that in it.
So, but it hasn't been changed. It hasn't been heated and it hasn't been changed. The second thing is that yes, there is a lot of genetically modified soy, but there is some soy that you can get that's organic, and you can at least as clean as you can.
I'm just busting.
I know, but you can get that soy now. Real quick, let's go back. There's a couple comments here, Mitch. I want to go back and try to get these. David Miller, he's a gentleman who watches. He comments fairly regularly on the show. So he says that he would be curious. Let's go back first, though. The second one, he says it's certainly not the case that nobody cares about pregnant women unless they want to end the pregnancy. So I think what he's just saying is to generalize that is probably not good, because there are probably people in the lives of women who are looking to have an abortion that really do care about that woman. But Mitch, you're saying as a whole, most people don't really worry about it until we find out they're having an abortion.
I'm definitely painting with a broad brush, right? And I shouldn't do that, because there are people just like yourself, or how there are ministers out there that do take an extra step to kind of break that, spend more time with the woman to make sure that they know that they have other options. But the majority of people, or I would say the reality of the current situation, is how many people are out there adopting children right now?
Right.
Right? How many people are, I mean, but at the end of the day, I agree. It's not that everybody doesn't, or that nobody does. It's just, it's an exception.
Yeah.
It really is an exception.
Okay. And you mentioned this just a few minutes ago, so we'll grab his other comment there. But he says, I'd be curious what your thoughts are about the border crisis. And you mentioned something about border just a few minutes ago. So what are your thoughts on that?
There isn't a crisis.
On
Really?
on fake news, you would see it there.
I mean, I guess how you define crisis, right? First of all,
I'm going down to the border tonight.
when I said there isn't a crisis, I'm just saying that there definitely needs to be the controls in place, and we need to speed up or remedy the immigration system, because it's really, really, it's horrible right now. But how many jobs have, I mean, are we talk about crisis from the fact that, like, a lot of illegal or undocumented individuals are taking our jobs away? Are they bringing over, like fentanyl, and are they bringing over like guns? Is that really happening? I'm sure it happens, right? But who's using the fentanyl? Probably 90% of Geauga County, right? Like this is where the problem is. But do you really think that? I shouldn't have said that. That was rude. That's really rude.
It's 93%, by the way.
It was really rude. But I mean, just coming home, I've talked to people, and it's like I've never heard. It's so bad here. Like it's crazy, crazy bad.
The drugs?
The drug, yeah.
Oh,
I was just really surprised. I can't tell you how many people from my high school class or younger have died from this. It's just crazy. But is it really Mexicans bringing it over the border? Like really? Like that's
it's not all Mexicans.
right. No,
I don't agree with that.
okay, but in regards to the crisis that
China. It's coming from China.
it may be, it may be. No, but in regards to the crisis, like first of all, like California is a major agricultural state, and when it comes to like jobs per se, people have this misconception that a lot of Mexicans or Latin American people that come over here undocumented are taking away our jobs. It's not the case. You know what? I drive past like many commercial farms on a regular basis, right? I see them out in California, right? It's not Jimmy and Mary out there picking the strawberries, right? It could be, right? But it's always Maria or Jose. So if they are filling a void that we don't want to take on our own accord, right? And if there wasn't undocumented, I wish they were all documented and legal. That'd be great, even for them. But if we didn't have undocumented immigrants in our system, can you imagine what a pint of strawberries would be, right? It'd be so expensive. And they're actually, a lot of times you'll hear people arguing the fact, they don't pay taxes. They actually pay more taxes than us. Because, and I know this with certainty, because an employer, unless they're doing it under the table, which happens everywhere, whether they're undocumented or not. I know a number of people that work under the table and they're born in the USA, right? Mm-hmm. But when the vast majority of these undocumented workers are working for organizations that file taxes with the government and whatnot, and they have these social security numbers, and the employer is required to take taxes out of their paycheck, just like us, right? But the undocumented individual can't file for a tax return, so they can't get any money in return on the taxes they paid. So they, in reality, are paying a higher percentage of income tax than the average person is, because they can't file their income tax. Now, if they're working under the table, that's a whole different story. But the vast majority that I'm aware of undocumented individuals working are getting a paycheck.
Okay, so I'm not following then. If they're undocumented and they're here illegally,
Mm-hmm.
and they're getting a paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
how are they paying taxes from that paycheck without somebody going to jail or somebody?
They're most likely using social security numbers for individuals that are alive and don't work, or social security numbers for individuals that are dead.
That's not right.
From what I understand.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And so it's not right. I agree. It's not legal. But they are still the employers withholding income tax from them, or payroll taxes from them, right? But they can't file to get their income tax return because it would come in the individual's name and it's not them, and so on and so forth.
Interesting.
Dude, that is wild.
Wild in what regard? Wildly inventive.
I'm gonna find a friend by the name of Jose, give him my dad's social security number.
Yeah.
Because he's been gone, and I'll split it 50-50.
But immigration brings a huge value. And I tell you what, like California, we have, I don't know that we have the largest border, but we probably do have one of the largest, I don't know if it's us or Texas has a bigger border.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's very many people, not to try to speak for every Californian, that's for sure, that says that we have a border crisis. It just really isn't.
So let me ask the question: isn't the crisis, if we were to kind of distill this down just a little bit, the crisis is not necessarily that people are trying to flee their country for a better life. So that is a crisis in their country, and they're trying to come here. But the crisis in America is that we don't have a plan, and Biden doesn't have a plan. Trump didn't have a plan really either, other than we're going to build this wall. But the plan is that the amount of people that are coming over here and then not being documented, we need to figure that whole thing out,
right,
and fix that problem, and make sure every single person that's crossing that. And maybe it did start with putting up some kind of way that they couldn't cross illegally, and then that way they're going through customs and however that whole thing works, and they're figuring that whole thing out and getting that done. But to me, that would be the crisis. But then once they're over here, I think I agree with you that the fentanyl and all that drug stuff, it didn't just get over here by illegal aliens. I remember the conspiracy theory of
Undocumented immigrants is the appropriate term to
Undocumented
use.
immigrants, yeah.
Aliens are in space.
Aliens are in space, right? So, but remember the whole conspiracy of Clinton? I mean, using the military in Afghanistan to literally bring drugs over here in the military, on military planes. At night, they were flying these drugs in. Now, we could say conspiracy, but I think we know that the government has issues. And back in the day, MK Ultra with the whole LSD thing, where they were literally hopping people up on LSD for all kinds of reasons and testings. Our own government was doing that to military people, to people in society, all that kind of stuff. So we know that the military is not above doing these kind of shady operations. So we're sitting around going, oh, it's the undocumented immigrants that are coming in bringing all these drugs, when in fact I think our own government does it as well.
Yeah, and the rapists and the murderers are coming over. I'm sure there are some rapists coming over undocumented, and some murderers coming over. Right? It's just a numbers game at that point. But I mean, who's shooting up schools? It's not the undocumented Mexican that came over the border. It's Jimmy Jones from you know what I mean? Like, and not to pick on that population either. But at the end of the day, I think that there's much more value in immigration than there is economic hardship to look forward to. I think it doesn't make sense to me.
So is it all, go ahead, Marianne.
Like the cartel stuff down there is a real deal, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's really bad, especially in the border towns like Tijuana and stuff. And
They don't
it's
play
even.
around.
I'm sorry.
They don't play around.
No, but they do have. I mean, I think the reason why it is even more, it's more violent than it's ever been is because they actually have a president and some federal officials that are trying to step up and break it apart, and they're just getting much more aggressive in doing that. Both are. The government's getting more aggressive in controlling it, and therefore the cartels are just putting everything they have on the street, right? I mean, I'm not an expert in that field, but I've been to Mexico. I've been traveling to Mexico since I was, 10 years old, and quite regularly, and it has changed a lot for sure. But it's just because I think that it used to be okay to have the cartel as part of your daily life, but when they tried to stop it, that's their revenue stream, so they're going to do what they can to bypass that.
Right. And ultimately, people have a choice. So if somehow fentanyl makes its way to Jog County, people still have a choice to make.
Yeah. So how do Christians weigh, I guess, that dilemma on immigration, right? Or the problems that are coming from immigration? Because aren't we supposed to be there to help those in need and be the ones to step up and take the higher road? Like, why? How do you guys argue? How do Christians argue this?
Well, I would say some Christians argue it from a non-biblical standpoint, and a lot of times they'll just take the conservative view, and the conservative view is whatever is on Fox News or whatever, and they just take that ground and they run with that. Biblically, Jesus was always about including every single person into the kingdom, but that kingdom is a spiritual kingdom. And so Jesus was not about trying to figure out and help nations figure out how to decide who comes into their country and who doesn't come into their country. That's left up to the governments, and hopefully the governments would be calling on the wisdom of God to make those, choices. So I think the bigger crisis in America, now that you asked this question, I think the bigger crisis in America is that we don't have a government that depends on the God of all creation to give them wisdom. I think they're using human wisdom and human ideologies and opinions and thoughts, whether it's conservative, leftist type policies, and they're playing with these people. And I think, to be honest, probably the children and the women and probably even a lot of the men that are trying to get over this country, they're probably the ones that are actually missing out or getting beat up in the whole thing. So at the end of the day, Jesus was about bringing people into the kingdom, but that's a spiritual kingdom. So that means that if I'm at the border and I see a person on the other side, I want to talk to them about getting into the kingdom of Jesus, which means you got to surrender your life. You got to realize that you're a sinner and that you need Christ because he died for your sins, and he's the God who created you. And you know that the life you've been living is just, it just gives you brokenness. And so why not start following Jesus and let him not only save your soul for all of eternity, but help clean up and help you to live a life that is, I guess, really productive and purposeful and meaningful. Mm-hmm. And so not that their life isn't purposeful and meaningful. They might have purpose and meaning, but the purpose and meaning that they were created for from their creator. So I start talking to them about that, and then they go, okay, maybe I'll do that. And then they say, if I do that, can I cross the border? And I'd be like, well, there's a law, and the law is you have to apply for visa and all that stuff. So that's the law. See, ultimately, I think that's how Jesus would respond to that. Jesus wants them all in the kingdom because God's kingdom is big enough for everybody. But this border crisis, you still have to do what's right. And so if the law is you as an illegal, an undocumented immigrant, you as an undocumented immigrant, if you become a follower of Jesus, Jesus talked about if man has a law, unless it's breaking the law of God, then you need to follow that. So now, as a Christian, I would want to try to help that person try to figure out how to do this legally. I think that's how Jesus would address that.
So you think, so when you told that story, what I envisioned was, I don't know if you guys have ever been to the border, right? But there's just it's this big fence, right?
Oh, I know. I isolated it.
And I envisioned you looking through that fence
Yeah.
and talking to this wannabe immigrant
Mm-hmm.
and telling him the way of the Lord and what's best. And then I envisioned you saying at the end, but back to your safety, thank God I was born over here, so good luck.
No.
And I'm not saying that you'd be that crude, but
Yeah.
that's how it feels. Because in reality, what is legal?
Okay.
Is it legal? It's illegal for them to come here because we have our laws set up. But we illegally took their land. So where do you draw the line? Is it now okay because years have passed? We literally have stolen the best part of Mexico away from them, right? California, Arizona, New Mexico. That was Mexico. And now it's our country because we won that war, right? But it was illegal. We legally took it. But just because time has now passed, we can sit in silence and be like, okay, it's our land now.
No, I don't take for granted the fact that I live in a place where I don't have to be afraid necessarily.
No. And I didn't mean to comment. My comment wasn't directed towards you being kind of cold or barren to that idea. But it's just that's all that we feel that we can do is would Jesus truly look through that gate and be like, follow me and I'll show you the way, but for the rest of the time, stay undercover so you don't get murdered?
Well, I think he did look through that gate. If you read the Gospels, there were often times where he would approach people, he would share the inheritance of the kingdom, that they could be a part of his kingdom. But then after they had that inheritance of the kingdom, they still had to live in a Roman province where Rome's tyranny would come against them because of their faith. And they would actually die because they followed Jesus years later. So, yeah, I think ultimately, I think Jesus' message has always been that this life is a battleground as well as a training field for eternal life that we were really made for. Mm-hmm. I think if you go back to Genesis, we were made to live in eternal life. We were made to live forever. That's how we were created. I think personally, everybody senses inside of them that death is this horrible thing. I mean, now some people have come to a conclusion that, okay, it's fine, I'm going to die. But I think ultimately inside we're like, man, you would think that whoever did this would have figured out a way for this for us to continue. And ultimately, if you read Genesis, God said we were created to live with him forever in eternity. So ultimately, when Jesus comes and brings people into the kingdom, now the idea is my life is now in the kingdom of God. It's eternal. It's spiritual. So if I'm on the other side of the fence and this guy tells me about the gospel and I come to put my trust and my faith in the God who created me and wants to give me eternal life, then first of all, whatever happens to me, I'll be okay because I'll be in the kingdom. And I know that's hard for people to think because a lot of us, we always think about the here and now. And God said this isn't what it's all about, the here and now. But then secondly, if I really believe in the power of this God, then I'm going to say, even though you're on the other side of that fence, God can protect you until we get this whole thing settled. And I know that doesn't help them feel better. I know they're still going to be scared.
It also doesn't always protect them either.
No, it doesn't.
They still will die. They still could die.
Exactly. And that's what happened to a lot of Jesus's followers. That's what happened to a lot of people that Jesus spoke to. They still were living under Roman tyranny. And so, you know, for their faith, they died. For certain reasons, they still had to pay huge amounts of taxes and things like that. Some of them were used and abused and probably traded for all kinds of things. You go into the Old Testament, a lot of times God's people were sold into slavery for certain purposes, but God still provided for them and was trying to get them to get back to the place where they would follow him and let him be their God. So ultimately, yeah, I don't have a remedy for the problem. And I'm just one person, and sometimes I think what happens is we think, well, if I went down and, like you said, if I looked across that fence and said that to that person, I'm probably never going to do that because, number one, I don't have the money to go down there and stay on the border, and I'd probably get, you know, arrested or something. But then if I did tell that person that and I shared that with them, what am I going to do to help them, you know, get over here? Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's also working under the assumption that they're not already believers in God.
Exactly. They could be.
And we know that, yeah,
Right.
we know there are some, right? I'm sure there are.
There might be some really good, God-fearing Christian people that are going to come over there and they're going to cross that border. Now, I would hope that if they're God-fearers, they would want to do it legally. But that's not necessarily always true, because just because we're a God-fearer and because we're a Christian doesn't mean we always do things right.
Yeah, because
So
if
they
you
might-
were in that situation, even being a pastor,
Right.
in that situation, and you had your kids that were 2 and 3 years old, would you risk breaking the law to have life?
I get it.
I absolutely would.
Yeah, I get it.
But I'm not a pastor. That being said, so educate me on my understanding in regards to the Holy Land per se, and that Jesus's goal was for the Jews to have a homeland, right? Is that true? And physical land, not just in the kingdom. Wasn't there some fight to allow the Jews to kind of like create their own homeland or to have a homeland?
Well, that's debatable depending on who you would talk to in their understanding of the scriptures. God called out a guy by the name of Abraham in Genesis chapter 12 and said, I'm going to bless you. And by the way, Abraham was not a Jew. Abraham actually came from Ur of the Chaldees, so he was Chaldean. And then God said, but I'm going to take you. And he used to worship other idols and other gods. But he said, I'm going to take you, and if you'll follow me, I'm going to make you a great nation. And so he took him and his wife, Sarai, and he took them to a land. And that land was part of this blessing. And that land was the land of Canaan, which was the land of Jerusalem, Israel, where we see today, where we're at today. So as he took him there, though, then Abraham and Sarai had Isaac, who was the promised child, and this was the promise. I'm going to make you a great nation. Well, if I'm going to make you a great nation, that means you got to have kids, and they got to have kids, and this is going to be the nation. So ultimately, they had Isaac, and Isaac had Jacob and Esau, and Jacob had 12 sons, and from those 12 sons came the 12 tribes of Israel, and that became the Hebrew people, or the Jewish people. And the goal was for them to always inherit this land, and that God would fight for them, and he would give them this land. But the land was always pointing towards the promise of rest. And that rest ultimately was in the person of Jesus Christ. So, in the history of all that, the Jewish people have always seen it as a fight for land. But when Jesus showed up, even though I still believe that God is going to do something with the land, there's something prophetic about the land. When Jesus showed up, he said, I am the way and the truth and the life. Anyone who comes to me, will not perish. They'll have life. So Jesus now fulfills all of that stuff. He fulfills the land. He fulfills the blessing. He fulfills all that. So now when we come to Christ, now we are in him. So now there isn't a Jew or a woman or a man or a Gentile. We're all one in Christ Jesus. And so now being in that kingdom, Jesus is the fulfillment of the promise of rest. So now we are in his rest. It doesn't matter if we're in Jerusalem, doesn't matter if we're there, but there is still something that's going to happen in Ezekiel chapter 38 and Revelation that's going to happen with his ethnic people, the Jews, and that land, and that's the Battle of Armageddon. But that's not just with the Jews. That's the whole world. So ultimately, yeah, they see it as a battle for the land. But Jesus, when he came, no, I'm the rest now. Everyone who comes to me now that's how you find rest. It's not about being in the land anymore, because ultimately God Himself was their rest. Did that make sense at all?
No, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. I still turn it back to that. I just find it really difficult to understand how it's not like this crisis, this border crisis or immigration crisis, isn't something that religious people are like up in arms against. Like, let them come over. Let us help them. Because it's a law, right? But I feel just like the average human, they pick and choose what they want to follow, whether it be legal or not legal, right? When abortions were legal, were you guys okay with it? No, you fought against it, even though it was the law of the land, right? And I don't mean to, again, say you guys, but like religion as a whole. But when it comes to the border crisis, oh no, it's illegal. You should stay over there. Like how do you balance out the right decision in the name of God and Jesus, and not necessarily leveraging the law how you want to leverage it, or how you want to when and why you want to stand behind it?
Yeah.
I mean, these are people dying, right? Like human beings. They're not
Right.
coming over here to take our jobs. They're not coming over here to be major fentanyl dealers here. They're literally trying to live.
Some of them.
The vast majority of them. I mean,
Well, I don't know.
okay, right. We don't know, but we can say maybe one out of every 100,000 people. I'm totally making this up. Is a drug dealer. Let's just say.
Okay.
In the United States, do you think that the people coming over the border, the statistically higher drug dealers, just by statistics? So let's just say it by that.
Brandon said, yeah.
They are.
I don't know.
I would say 2 in every 100,000.
My point is, you can make an assumption
Say
that the
5 of
majority
every
of people, there are always bad people.
No, I agree.
regardless.
I agree.
But there are not more bad there.
So then ultimately, like I said, I don't have a problem. And I think it's been said on at least some of the side that is against undocumented people coming in. I think some people have said that they don't have a problem with us, because this is the place where people immigrated from other countries, and that's why America is what it is. We're a Heinz 57 here.
In addition to stealing other people's land, right?
No, right. You're exactly right. Yeah, and now we give them a little piece of reservation and tell them to gamble and drink a lot of alcohol.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we just don't let them over if you're Mexican, because this was Mexico.
That's true. So I get that, but at the end of the day, too, there has to be some kind of a policy in place to do it right. But I think when you're dealing with corrupt things and you're dealing with people who really don't care whether they do things right, and they don't really care about human life, they just care about how much money's in their pocket, you're never going to fix the crisis at the border.
Absolutely.
Whatever.
It's by design.
It's not going to happen.
It's by design. Jamie says people are dying trying to get here. Children are getting hurt. This absolutely is a crisis. You're right. But Jamie, if you were that mother and you're willing to put your child's life at risk to try to get somewhere, how bad does your situation have to be? How bad would your situation have to be to know that I'm risking my child's life to leave this place? Mothers wouldn't just randomly make that decision just to have a better life. Like, there's truly a reason why they're putting their lives at risk to come here. And while it is a tragedy for sure, in their eyes, it's worth it, because they're going to die anyway, or their life's going to be. It's not that they're just going to be poor, or they're going to be live in poverty the rest of their life. Like, these people are getting murdered, and they're running away from this. And why can't we accept them openly and help them? And I know we have limited resources. I know that
Right.
we don't have we don't have unlimited resourtions. And I know there's got to be some control mechanism in place. But to your point, it is by design that it's so crazy and chaotic, because they need a speaking point or topic to really get their populace to vote for them.
Yeah.
It's just like, everything. They don't want this to be fixed.
Yeah.
Why are we like number 14 in education in the United States when we have the most money? Because they need ignorant people. If everybody was educated, we wouldn't have the powers that be where they are today.
I hear what you're saying.
Right? And it's...
Well, yeah, and it would be nice if people could just sit down and go, obviously we don't have a solution to the crisis on the border, and so maybe we should kick all the politicians out and find some other ignorant people to put in there,
Amen.
maybe some uneducated people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's not because this show's called Uneducated, but maybe we put some uneducated people in there and see what they could do. Yeah, it's just it's a mess. I don't have an answer to it, but I really believe that Jesus does have the answer to it, because whether it's a border thing or whether it's an abortion issue, every single one of those women and those little babies that are inside of them, and every single one of those moms and dads that are on the other side of the fence, and their children are hungry and they're in danger of dying, Jesus cares about every single one of those people. And we're supposed to care about them too, but we're supposed to care enough to tell them about salvation in Christ Jesus. And at the end of the day, we could give them a job and a place to live, but ultimately that's 70 years of putting up with the world's junk, and then they still haven't answered the question to eternity. And I think that's where the church has failed to love people enough to tell them about eternity and to tell them about the fact that Christ has loved them and gave his life for them. And I think the church has really failed in that by getting involved in what we're talking about. The church gets involved in these political issues and then wants to take a conservative side when our calling as a church was to preach the gospel. I don't think Jesus' calling was ever to fix Rome or to make sure that their tax code was right or to make sure that they, the governors of the different provinces were treating their people right. Jesus never talked against that stuff. He talked about loving your brother. He talked about blessing people who curse you. He talked about, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He talked about if someone slaps you on your right cheek, turn and give him your left cheek, Mm-hmm. So he spoke all these kinds of things, saying that you've got to, this is your border. Middlefield or Burton or wherever you live, this is your border. It starts in your household. How do you treat your wife? How do you treat your kids? Then it extends out to how do you treat the person at the grocery store? And then how do you treat the person that you're working with? And, well, I can't stand that person. Well, Jesus said, you might not be able to stand them, but I created them, and I want you to love them. Well, all they do is curse me all day long. Jesus said, okay, I want you to bless them. And that's where every Christian, we want to fight and argue about the border crisis. Or we can't even figure out how to treat people right in our own job, places, our places of employment or our homes. I know for the last 22 years since Brian's been born, I've been working my tail off to be the best dad. And I have failed miserably in a lot of different places. But the places where I've succeeded is the places where I've let God continue to shape me to learn how to love those boys enough to sometimes do the hard things that need to be done, but then other times back off and stop thinking that I'm going to force them or control them to make that happen, and just kind of try to guide them and let them make decisions and let God teach them and show them. And that's been a real growing opportunity for me. But that's where I can make a difference. But I'm going to sit around and tell somebody I know what the crisis at the border is, and I know how to fix it, and I know what to do, and I'm on board with Trump, let's build a wall, or I'm on board with Biden, let's bring them all in, and all this stuff. And then I can sit around and say, I watched on the news yesterday that they don't know where half these kids are anymore. They're put in vans and they're taking off. And then my mind starts going to sex trafficking. They need kids. They don't have enough, but you can run that gamut, and it might be true. But at the end of the day, I have a responsibility. Jesus told me I have a responsibility right here in my own borders. And then once I get that thing figured out, maybe I'll actually have some wisdom to speak into some of this other stuff. But I think most people do the opposite. They don't worry about their own borders, but they're talking and speaking about all this other stuff that they don't really know or have information on.
So what I derive at what all the conversations we're having right now is like almost the reason for separation of church and state, right? Would you agree to a point?
Well, ultimately, separation of church and state was not about, it was about the state not imposing on the church. It wasn't about the church not being able to speak into government things. It was always a law about so that the government couldn't control the church. That was the separation of church and state.
Ure, okay. But I mean, Roe v. Wade wasn't necessarily about abortions either. Right?
I hear what you're saying.
And so and that's just the fundamentals of law, right? It's got to be kind of like it's not binary specifically, right? But and having like church, I mean, United States was founded due to persecution of religion, right? So you can assume that religion wasn't part of the fabric, right? It is and it was, right?
Right.
But for the examples that you said, like, if Jesus was there, and I know you're not speaking for Jesus, like, he would do that. He would say, just find me, or be one with me, right? But he wouldn't necessarily, bring everybody over the border, because that's the law of the land, right? But that person doesn't want to hear about that right now.
I know.
So so that's where we need to eliminate, I guess, the ideas of religion coming into that decision making from laws, because it's not about religion at that point. I don't think it is.
Okay.
It's about being a human being.
Right. I agree. And that's why I think Jesus is the master of being able to deal with the idea of being human, because he is the God of all creation who created humans, and then he became a human. And so then, like, you have the story of him and the woman at the well. And he's having a drink with this woman, or actually he's not, well, okay, I'm saying he had a drink. It's like at the bar, hey, pull me up a scotch and whatever on the rocks.
Wine would be fine.
Yeah. But so she's there in the middle of the day, and she's getting ready to draw some water. And he says to her, would you give me a drink? Now, here is an immigration type of problem, or a problem with ethnicities. She says to him, how is it that you, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan woman, to give you a drink? Because the Jews and the Jews thought the Samaritans were dogs, and the Samaritans didn't like the Jews, and the Samaritans worshipped in their place, and the Jews worshipped in theirs. There was all kinds of separation between the two of them. And yet Jesus crosses that boundary, and he says to her, he crosses that borderline, and he says to her, hey, would you give me a drink? And she says, how is it you, a Jew, would ask me? And then he says to her, if you knew who I was, you would ask that I would give you a drink. And I would give you living water that would bubble up and flow in you, a well that would flow everlasting. And so he's trying to bridge the gap in that humanness, that all of her concerns are about Samaritan Jew. Her concerns are about drawing water for the day. And he's saying there's a deeper truth here. And the truth is that there's a God who loves you and wants to transform your life and wants you to live in eternal truth, so that you understand not only how to live here, but how to live in eternity. So then she says, okay, well, who's right? The Jews say they should worship at the temple, and the Samaritans say we should worship on this mountain. And Jesus said, there's coming a day, and it is now, that no one will worship except in spirit and truth. He said, because the Father wants people to worship him in spirit and in truth. And so then he says, go get your husband. And she's like, I don't have a husband. And he said, you're right. You've spoken truly, because you have had five husbands, and the husband you're with now is not actually your husband. And now she's freaked out. So long story short, she goes back into town, and she tells everybody, she says, I think I found the Messiah. Come and see. He told me everything I know about myself. So I think that's where Jesus, he literally crosses the border as a human, because he understands humanity, and then he talks into people's lives to help them understand that humanity is wrought, or its beginning is in the spirit. And until we understand how much we need this connection with God, we'll always live in this turmoil of this junk here on this earth. And I think Jesus is the one who does that perfectly.
Right.
I think he does speak to our humanity. Huge. And I think that's the problem with the church, and I think that's the problem with Christianity. We don't speak to people's humanity. All we want to do is either point out their sin or argue and fight about them, whether or not the border crisis is this or that, or whether abortion is this or that. I get it. I have certain views. I believe the Bible very strongly speaks against certain things. I understand it. But I have one job. I'm supposed to love people, I'm supposed to bless those who curse me, and I'm supposed to preach the gospel to them, and then they have to make that decision. They have to decide. So say, for instance, Brandon, I'm preaching the gospel to him, and he says, well, that's a really good story, Brian. I would like to follow Jesus too. But you know what? I really like sleeping around with women. I really like that. And I say to myself, well, I hope Jesus grabs hold of your heart, because I know Jesus knows that's not best for you. Now, at the end of the day, I can't change him. But I need to at least give him the message that Jesus loves him, and he wants the best for him. And that stuff's going to break his life.
That's what we were talking about with Bob the other day, basically. Calling people out on stuff.
Yeah. So we were talking with a friend of ours, and we were having Bible study, and we were just talking about the need for Christians to kindly and gently call each other out. Like, for instance, if Brandon saw me treating April the way I treated her last night, like,
You want to ship her to California
I was
to
gonna,
work.
yeah, I was gonna send her
Send
to.
her, send her paychecks home. And then he would be okay with her flying home once a month.
Yeah,
Amen.
we found out that teachers in California make what, like, 80.
I think the average is about $100 and some thousand a year, but I don't think that every teacher makes it. I think they start in their 80s or something like that.
Yeah. So I said, man,
I believe. I'm not for sure.
we'll have you out there working during the week, and then you send a paycheck home, and I'll fly you home on the weekends.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. But if he saw me treating her in a way that's not Christ-like, I think he should have the invitation, at least from me. Mm-hmm. He should have the invitation to walk in and say, "Hey, Brian, I think that's kind of messed up how you're doing that," with gentleness, with love, because we're here as brothers and sisters to try and help each other live the way Christ called us to live. But ultimately, I got to make that choice. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because Jesus didn't look at that woman and say, "You've had 5 husbands, you're a whore, and you're worthless." That's not what he said to her.
Right, right.
He said, "You've had 5 husbands." All he was doing was, here's where you've been living all your life. Do you want to change where you've been living, and do you want to follow the Messiah, the God of all creation? Because I can cause your life to be put back together. All that brokenness, I can cause it to be put back together in the right way. And I think that's where he bridges that whole humanity thing.
So in summary, taking the 3 elements of you think that's your responsibility, right? One, to love, to preach, spread the word, and what was the third one?
And bless people in any way I
Bless
can.
people, yeah.
Even the people that curse me, I'm supposed to bless them.
And it's not your job. It shouldn't be your responsibility, and you can't. It's not your responsibility to make somebody change or
Right.
to enforce change on somebody.
Right.
So where does your moral line or moral compass guide you when it comes to enacting laws or regulations against individuals' rights?
Okay. So the people of God used to live in the Old Testament, they used to live in what was known as a theocracy. And that means the theos, which is God. So they were governed by God. So ultimately, I've chosen to follow Christ, and I believe that him and his word and by his spirit, he governs my life. So if I'm walking down the street and I see a piece of paper floating in the thing, okay, there's no law that tells me I have to pick that up. Mm-hmm. Now, somebody that threw it down might get fined $500, but there's no law that says I have to pick it up. But in my spirit, God says, pick that up.
Okay.
And so I go pick it up. That's my law now. But my governing authority is God for me. Now, I live in America. America is a democracy or a republic or whoever wants to call it whatever they want to call it. It's supposed to be, right? I live in that environment. God said, wherever you live in there under those laws as much as you can so that you're able to follow me. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, if the government told me that I had to kill my child because I'm only allowed 2 children, then I'm not going to do that. That story is found like in the Moses story, where the Hebrews were told by the Egyptians you had to kill all male babies, and the Hebrew women said, "No, God, we're not doing that. God doesn't want us to kill our babies." And they didn't do that. That's where Moses comes, and so that's that whole story there. So I'm living in a government that says, there's certain laws. I'm going to follow those laws as best I can, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be perfect in it. And that also means that if I don't follow that law, I'm going to accept the consequences and at least admit that, you know what, I didn't follow that. So if I'm speeding down the road doing 65 and a 45 and I get a ticket, I shouldn't try to figure out a way to say that cop was mean to me. Or this is stupid that it's 45 and it should be 65. No, I'm going to accept the fact that I was wrong. Because ultimately, I live under the authority of God's law, and God said, you follow those laws. And so in my mind, the Spirit says, Brian, I told you, you follow those laws. There was no reason why you had to drive 65. So then I just accept the fact that I was wrong, and I confess that, I admit that, and God's forgiveness comes in and cleanses that. So for me, personally, I live in another kingdom. Mm-hmm. I don't live under America's law or China's law or whatever. But since I live in that kingdom, I'm going to do my best to abide by these laws that are here. And if I can, I'll try to make those laws better. But ultimately, I can only do what I can do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I was also considering like the parallel between you delivering your responsibilities and not necessarily trying to change anybody, because that's based upon the individual to make the decision, right? But I'm talking about like voting or getting a lot of like religious um, a lot of religious groups backing up certain laws, like Roe v. Wade or gay marriage, for example, right? That's them literally trying to change the outcome of an individual's personal decision and choice, which is not your responsibility. But they're advocating as if it's what God would want. But we just discussed that well, maybe not God's responsibility, but your responsibility is to educate, to love, and to help guide their way to God, not make them decide one way or the other. But these laws are just that. They're limiting the individual's right to make a decision, and that's what God gives you, right? Free will, right? Yeah. But I mean, I don't know how you voted, and I don't know how I could say that the majority of religious people probably would have voted to overturn Roe v. Wade, or to eliminate gay marriage, or not even allow gay marriage, for example. Why is that appropriate? Like, why are we crossing the boundaries of the governed society that the Lord says you need to live within, as long as it doesn't conflict with my blessings? But you're kind of you're allowing your personal decision to control the personal decisions of others, and that's where it becomes problematic. And that's the discussion we had last night on why religion is being turned away from so frequently, or so much more now than before.
So I didn't vote, and some people would say, as a pastor and as a Christian and as an American, I'm an idiot. Some people would say that, but I didn't vote because I felt like the powers that be that control all this stuff, I didn't feel like my vote didn't matter, but I didn't really feel like I had a choice, number one. And I didn't feel like even if I made that choice known, it was necessarily going to make a difference. So I had my own reasoning, and some people would say that was stupid, that was idiotic, you should have voted, but I chose not to. But in the midst of it, I hear what you're saying, and I would agree with the sense that sometimes America, the home of the land of the free and the home of the brave, that people have fought to have rights and to express those rights in this country. Okay, is that somebody's phone?
No, I just want to take it off, but I can't because my
it'll turn off in a second, right? Yeah. So people have fought to have a land where people can express their freedoms and their rights in this country. And so with that, then Christians have enjoyed that liberty so that they can freely worship. And we're now living in a world where some Christians they feel the pressure of that stuff going away, or they feel the pressure of that stuff being taken from them, the right to be able to do certain things, and so they feel like if we give an inch here, they're going to take a mile. And so some Christians are really adamant about fighting against that. I take a little different approach, that at the end of the day, God is in control. If I have an opportunity to make a wise choice on something, then I'll do my best to make that wise choice. But I don't know that it's my goal necessary unless God calls me, like say God called me to a representative of a state or the president or something like that. Well, then, yeah, I would want to use the law that governs me, God's law. I would want to use that to be wise in how I govern. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, that's not the people that are governing now, that at least not what I've seen.
Right.
So ultimately, I don't feel like it's my job to change that. Ultimately, I feel it's my job to preach the gospel and to love people. So I think there are Christians who are very adamant about saying, yeah, so for instance, if we let the law tell people that they can, people of same sex can get married, if we allow the law to do that, then all of a sudden we're opening the door for something else, and pretty soon the Christian faith is going to be degraded, and we haven't stood up for the rights of God and all those things. But let's face it, people who have been in same-sex relationships have been in same-sex relationships before there was ever a law.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Even in places where there's a law that says you can't,
right,
there's still people doing that. So ultimately, people are going to do what they're going to do. And I don't have a good argument. There might be a Christian that could come in here and make a stronger argument as to why they think it would be proper to fight against those things. I just personally don't think that's my calling.
Right.
And I personally don't think it's Christians' calling. Like, I think Matt, one time, him and I were having a discussion on abortion. And I agree with him.
Matt Miller or Matt?
No, Matt Wilson.
Okay.
We were having a thing on abortion. This was years ago. And he said, I think it should be legal. He said, but I think it should carry the same weight as anything else in the law, and that is that if someone murders someone, then they have to take the consequences. So it's legal. If you want to kill your baby, you can, but you're going to have to do it and reap the consequences because that's murder. But that's with people accepting the fact that that baby is a life, and if you murder that baby, then that's actual murder. But we've come to the place in our world that says, no, we can kill that baby. We don't like to call it murder because that sounds bad, but we can literally intentionally kill a baby at 9 months because it's not. And now there was even some laws passed, right, that the baby could come out, be on the table, and you could have some time to think about this. We've got Peter Singer, who's written books. I think he's out of Princeton or one of the big colleges, but Peter Singer has written several books on how we should be able to actually kill babies up to the age of 3 and maybe as late as 7, depending on if we find out they have some kind of a problem or an issue, we should be able to euthanize them. Now, granted, we would say that's never going to happen, but we also didn't think that abortion might happen, and become legal in some ways, back before Roe v. Wade and all these other things. So for me, ultimately, that's not my fight, but some people feel it is their fight. As long as they can fight with love and decency and respect and honor, I think it's okay to fight for those things. But the minute you start trampling on people and you start hating people and you start pushing people away, I don't think that's the way Jesus would do it.
Right. I agree. I just think you should leave. I mean, those fights, I think you maybe should leave, not necessarily leave religion out of it, but don't guide yourself and leverage religion as your reasoning per se in those things, because it's a very difficult mix. And you start kind of giving a bad reputation to religion when you use religion in vain like that, right? I mean, I feel
okay,
because you start looking at these religious followers as almost cult-like that accommodate themselves or accommodate their opinions, they allow themselves to be accommodated. I mean, like, it's what they want, and they'll twist God's words to accommodate what they want in life and to justify what they want in life, and it becomes very hypocritical.
I agree.
Right? And if you could leave it out of it and do as you're doing by just demonstrating and loving and not necessarily persecuting and not persecuting at all, it would really open the doors for many, many followers to come if they felt comfortable in that setting, right? And they're not being persecuted for what their beliefs are.
No, I agree with that. So that's why I think the concept of religion, because if you take religion, you use it broadly, you would say anybody that believes in God or has any kind of moral framework with God, but you're saying that people that abuse their faith and use it for their purposes of getting what they want. So when we say religion, like, I believe I'm a religious person. I do acts that are based on what I believe in my faith. So I'm religious in that sense. Mm-hmm. James said, good religion is to visit the widows and the orphans in their time of need. So religion is this idea that I practice what I actually believe.
Right.
So religion today, when we look at it, we see a lot of hypocrisy. So we just kind of label religion as a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way people do it. But if you throw out religion, or if I throw out my faith or my moral framework, then what am I going to base my foundation on creating laws or creating things that I think are wise and best for populations of people? Because you have to have some kind of foundation that causes you to say, yes, I think this is right and this is not. So if I were king over West Farmington, and West Farmington was saying, we think it's okay to kill, babies that are in the womb. And they said, Brian, you're going to write this law up and you're going to let people do this. I couldn't my moral framework from my biblical standpoint, my faith, would not allow me to do that. Now, someone might say, you're taking advantage of your power and you're not letting people do what they want to do. But I've been given that responsibility, so now I have to take that responsibility seriously, and I have I have to base my actions on my faith or my framework or what I believe to be true. So I wouldn't write that into law that you cannot abort babies in West Farmington because I hate those people or because I don't want them to have freedom, but because I think that that's wrong. Now, hopefully, I would also be wise enough to say, but since we're going to do this and we know that girls are going out and guys are taking advantage of them and they're letting that happen and they're consenting to that and they're getting pregnant, let's figure out how we can do a better job at helping this situation.
Right.
But but like we said before, most people don't do that stuff. And maybe I shouldn't say most, but there's a lot of things that are going on that we're not getting to the root cause and trying to figure it out.
Right, right. And sometimes intentionally.
Yes, I would agree. Because if you create enough chaos and problems, then you can sway people in certain directions.
Right. And that's where power stems from.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And I think in Christianity, that's one of the biggest abuses is that when Christians get into the faith, a lot of times they tend to use any kind of power they get, and then they manipulate the words to get people to do what they want. And that's evil. That's evil. I told you this last night that as a pastor of a church, I'll have people come to me and want me to do something for them that will please them. They'll want me to go take an action, go do something, you know. Brian, you need to go tell the people that the stuff that they clean the toilets with, I don't like that smell. You need to use your power to go make sure that those people don't use that toilet smell anymore, because that cleaning stuff really bothers me. All right, and we're in a small enough church where people would come to me maybe about something like that. Now, that hasn't happened, but I'll use that as an example. So they expect me to use my power to go stop them and say, hey, we're going to use something different because this person has an issue with the smell of this stuff. But then on top of that, I might, say something about the fact of how people are living in their lives. Like, you shouldn't be treating people like that. And they would say, don't speak into my life.
Right, right.
Don't tell me what to do. Okay, well, I'm not. I'm actually telling you what God's word says. You are okay with me using my position or my responsibility, my power, to make sure that the restrooms don't smell a certain way for you. But when I speak a truth, now all of a sudden, I'm not allowed to use that responsibility or that power that I've been given. So if a person uses their responsibility and their power for the good of people, hooray for everybody. Matter of fact, there's scripture texts that say when the king does right, everybody prospers. But when the king's evil, it sucks.
Right. But it's for personal gain in
Right.
those examples that you said.
Yep.
And that's when it's allowable.
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think, Brandon?
You've been kind of quiet, Brandon.
Do you want to be the king of Farmington or West Farmington?
What about the king of Garrettsville?
No.
Garrettsville's a nice place.
Are you in Garrettsville, right? Still?
Yeah. Yep.
I think Garrettsville's a nice place.
I've only been to that town, I think, once, and that was to take some driver's ed course.
For what?
I don't know. Take some. Didn't we have to go to school for driver's ed back in the day?
That was in Garrett. You did it in Garrettsville?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the only time I've ever known that town.
That's small.
You have a McDonald's right in the center, right?
That's it. We got a Taco Bell now.
Oh.
Do you eat that stuff?
No. I mean, and do I eat fast food? Yes, but I always try to get the Impossible Burger or something like that.
That has
Try to eat
canola.
healthy.
That's crazy.
That has canola oil in it.
Okay.
It's bad for your heart.
Causes inflammatory response in the body.
Really?
So I've been carnivore for like 10 months.
You've been a what?
Carnivore.
You've only eaten meat for 10 months?
Yeah. Like I had a little, like I was
You
silly.
stopped eating meat?
No, I do eat meat. That's all I eat.
Oh, only meat.
Yeah. Like I had a little, like I'll eat vegetables and stuff here and there, but not much.
Was carnivore like a thing? It's more than just like what we know definition-wise. It's like a new fad or something.
It's a whole movement.
It's a movement.
Yeah.
So you
So-
only eat meat. Why?
I don't know. They said it's supposed to be super good for you.
Why are we so quick to jump on bandwagons, I wonder?
Well,
Not you. I mean, everybody.
What's interesting about
Brian's now can't tolerate, what's that stuff in pasta?
Gluten.
Gluten. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Mom
that's-
fed him pasta every day of his life growing up.
I did. That's why I ached all the time. My joints. All right, Brandon's going to discuss this.
What's interesting is I took my blood work before I started it, and it was horrible.
What was like your cholesterol levels or what?
So my cholesterol was always high.
Me too.
Like your LDL.
Yeah. Wait,
So
HDL and LDL. LDL. Wait, which one's good?
HDL.
HDL is good.
Is your HDL high?
It's a lot higher now that I'm on the carnivore diet,
Oh, okay.
which is good cholesterol.
Yeah.
But my triglycerides were high. I mean, everything was just out of whack. I was on,
You took meds?
yeah, blood pressure medicine.
Really?
All that stuff's gone, and my blood work's good. Now, my cholesterol is like 178, my LDL, which is considered high.
Isn't 180 the or is it 190?
Over 100, I think.
Over 100.
What? No.
LDL. Your total cholesterol can be
Oh, I'm
under
sorry.
200.
Okay, I
Right.
apologize. Okay.
And then my HDL went up. Not much, but it did go up, which is interesting. But I'm off my blood pressure medicine. My blood pressure is normal. It's pretty
Yeah.
weird.
How long has it been?
Like 10 months maybe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I lost probably 20 plus pounds.
So it's like the low carb diet, almost.
Basically, yeah. I try not to eat carbs, but
Yeah.
like now, like milk was my downfall.
You drink milk? Like you drink like a glass of milk?
Gallon.
A gallon a day.
Really? Like without anything in it, you just drink it?
Yeah, just
Really?
drink it.
I haven't done that since a kid.
So
So
just this
disgusting.
last Sunday, I quit drinking milk, and I'm gonna see where that goes. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the problem with being vegetarian is like I used to always go on like not necessarily low carb diets, but restrict my carbs quite a bit.
Do you feel better though, right?
I do, but not like
You're hungry all the time.
I'm no as a vegetarian.
Yeah.
No, not at all. The problem is I don't eat the right food that I should be eating. You know what I mean? Like it's so easy. It's so difficult to be a vegetarian, and you have to prepare for it.
Because Lay's
That's
potato chips are vegetarian,
Exactly. Yeah.
but they're not good for you.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't eat a lot of potato chips. On that note, but it's just difficult. But like my I always thought my cholesterol was high too. But I always had
What was your numbers?
I don't know. All I know is my good cholesterol was 90, no, about 105. So it was quite high. I think over 50.
HDL?
It was, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So because of my bad cholesterol was high, my doctor, and this was for years.
Put you on a stand.
No, he said, I'm not worried about it because you have such high good cholesterol. It ranged from 90 to like 115 or something like that.
All right, let's analyze your life and what you eat, and then we'll start a diet and we'll market it that people can raise their HDL this way.
Sell it, yeah.
Well, I really think it was because a lot of the doctor said sometimes it could be hereditary.
Okay.
But also it was, he said because he assumed it was because I was doing a lot of proteins and like low carb.
Interesting.
But I have a new doctor, and he doesn't care how good my good cholesterol is. He wants me to go on high cholesterol medicine. I'm like, no way.
No,
Yeah.
tell him to go fly a kite.
I told my doctor.
Crazy, right?
So I didn't tell her in the beginning when I was doing, but I told her after I got my second round of blood work to see what changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her I've been on the carnivore diet, and she's like, if that works for you, that's fine. It obviously is, because your blood work's improved,
Yeah.
and you're not taking X, Y, and Z now. So, I mean, it's working for me.
I'm not getting old. I refuse.
Yeah, that's what I say.
Just start getting those Botox and stuff.
But that's not gonna help your heart.
No. But if your HDL is that high, that's really good.
That's really good. I think they want it above 50, right?
My last blood work was like 90, 95, 94, something like
That's
that.
pretty amazing.
What was your bad cholesterol?
My whole number was high, like 210,
That's not bad.
215.
Like,
something
how's
like
your
that.
triglycerides and all that?
I don't remember exactly. The triglycerides wasn't an issue. But I just know my cholesterol was like 215, and he was like, that's just ridiculous. And I'm like, my other doctor saw 220 when in my good cholesterol was like 115. He's like, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've never.
I would
been in-
stay with that doctor.
Well, I'm not going to accommodate myself. You know what I mean? I should go get a second opinion, but I don't want to start taking medicine.
No, I heard the statins make you feel like crap.
Yeah.
I guess they can, yeah.
Well, that's like when was it? I don't know where it was. Maybe it was New York that was deciding that they were going to outlaw the big gulp thing. Do you remember back in the day when that was happening?
Oh yeah.
Because of the whole.
I think they did do some law against sodas and everything.
Yeah.
Right? That you're talking about, right?
Michelle Obama was on this kick when she was in office, and I think that was a part of it, and trying to get people to eat healthier and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, that goes back to the question that you asked and we were talking about and stuff. Does God want us to regulate morality, like put it into law that you have to do this? I'm not so sure unless this was a theocracy where God's like, okay, I'm governing, but he's not. People are governing, and people are doing what they want, and you get to be in his kingdom, and you can live under his governance if you want, but you don't have to. And if you live under his governance, then you will start making better choices and right choices according to him. But if I'm put in a place of power, then I would think that God would want me to be wise, and if I had the opportunity to legislate something, I might do that. But that's a slippery slope, because then all of a sudden one person or several people are deciding what that is based on their morality. So now I'm in there and I decide, you know what? God really is against people being obese, because it says in the Bible you should not be a glutton. So McDonald's isn't going to be able to sell this junk anymore in my town, and blah, blah, blah. So I could legislate all that. But as soon as I leave, the next guy comes in and he's, a different brand, and then he signs another law in, and that's how it happens back and forth. So I don't think God ever expected the government to be his form of getting salvation to the world. I think that's why he called the church. That's why he called his followers to be that. And to be honest, I think we do a pretty bad job most of the time, because we end up trying to get involved in government stuff. Not that we shouldn't have a voice, not that we can't give our opinion and stuff, but I just think we should be doing what Jesus called us to do.
I agree. I think that because government, religion is pretty binary in nature, right? There's rules and kind of religious laws, right? Maybe you shouldn't call them that, but laws themselves or government is so messy, and I think that the Lord would never leverage the government as a platform, because he knows it's ran by humans. So it would never, what I mean? It's not going to be.
Yeah.
It's not the best method.
Right.
It's just messy.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've been here almost 2 hours now, gentlemen. It's 11:48.
What time is the show over?
It's supposed to be over 11.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but we're still going strong. I mean, we're more than happy to talk. I just got to jet out of here at 12:30 because I got to teach class. But is there anything else you guys want to throw out there and talk about? I wish we could have you on every week, Mitch. It's been good discussion.
I could start calling in.
You want to call in?
I mean, yes, I can.
We can do teams, because you said about teams. All right, we could do teams.
Yeah.
All right.
Not like every Friday. Like I can't.
We'll find. We'll schedule something.
What time is it? 12, 9. 9 o'clock. That's perfect. Oh yeah, so it's pretty early for me.
Okay. So we'll try to schedule something and bring you in on teams. Maybe like once or twice a month or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know there's some other stuff we were talking about too, like within the church, that would be really cool topics to talk about.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right. And be safe on your way back to California.
Will do.
All right. As long as it's not all slid off into the ocean.
It's broke. Yeah, remember that? California's supposed to break off in the ocean.
I think it's still going to happen.
Okay. At least then we'll have an island. It's fine. An island nation.
Global warming.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today on UnEducated. If you don't have a church to go to and you're in the area, check us out. But if you do have a church, make sure you get there and make sure you follow Christ in his ways, not necessarily just everything that the church is doing. All right. Have a good rest of the weekend, and we'll see you next time.